Well, I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Cool. Well, it's a pleasure to be able to talk to you, especially about Limbo, which it struck me while I was watching it. It's like a cross between Defending Your Life and The Devil and Daniel Webster, with one of the craziest twists. I don't want to give anything away, but
Right,
I don't
right.
quite know how I feel about it. I feel good things in general, but I was kind of upset by the at the end of the movie, which is probably the intent.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, thank you for watching it. Thank you for sitting down and taking that ride. And I'm hopeful you're amongst many that do so, because I think it's appropriate. Not just from the fact that we need new material. We've all been watching so much based on our current event, but also in light of the current event, we're all in a little bit of a limbo state, a little bit of a purgatory state. So it kind of serves our reality in an ethereal, uh, otherworldly type of way. And then to your point about the twist, we really were trying to land the spin. You didn't see that coming. I love that type of film myself, and I certainly really enjoyed being a part of it, which is what drew me to the script itself. I've worked with Mark Young. This would be my fourth picture now with Mark, the writer director of the movie. I tend to always connect with his material. He's really smart. He takes a real intellectual approach to his work, and I connect with that. And I'm fortunate that he invites me to be a part of it. So when I read Limbo, I was like, oh yeah, that I didn't see that coming. Wow. And we won't give anything away, but uh, I think that's what makes the story in and of itself, like 12 Angry Men of your soul, a courtroom drama based on your soul. We don't see that where the heaven sends down their public defender, and the prosecutor is there with hell. God and Satan have their best men put forward, and and then you're left in the middle to be judged. And it's did I make it? Am I good enough to go one way, or is there an event that can save me or put me over the top? I mean, we go through this in so many forms and fashions. I mean, like imagine yourself being uh, applying for a loan, for a mortgage, and in my application, was this the thing that sent me over to get approved? I mean, come
Yeah.
on. We're always in the place of approval. How many likes do we have? How many followers do we have in our social media? Are we good enough? So I think this lands, and I was really, honored and pleased to be part of it. Not without its challenges. It's a movie that had a lot of challenges to try to build that environment, which is otherworldly, rather ethereal, and to try to maintain that and then go out into reality and pick up reality again. It was certainly a challenge for me and my character, no doubt. So yeah, it was. I'm really pleased with it.
Well, that's the crazy thing is this is not a knock on the film, but it's easy to forget while you're watching it that it is sort of two different movies.
Yeah.
The flashback. Let me just set it up for those who don't know what we're talking about. So your character Jimmy Boyle is a guy who's kind of down on his luck. He's had a really messy past, and he winds up in a situation that gets him sent to limbo. He dies, and he's sort of on trial for his life. Um, and through the course of this, there are witnesses brought up from the depths of hell, and there are flashbacks to the life he was living before he died. And those flashback scenes specifically centering on your character's relationship with a young prostitute in your apartment building named Angela, who was played, remarkably by was it? I'm struggling with her name.
Lauren Canning
Okay,
is her
yes,
name,
yeah,
and she's lovely and interesting. We found her. Shannon McCaney, our casting director, found her along with Lucien Collier, who plays Balthazar. Those were two new talents for us, and they were so right and so spot on, and their performances were so great, as were everyone's in this movie. You know, originally, and when I read the script, I was sorry to interrupt on your.
Oh,
you'll
no.
get back to
Oh, yeah.
to setting it up, but I was prone to the Balthazar character, and Mark and I talked a lot about it, and he said, you know, my instinct tells me, I know it's written for a haggard, you know, dyed-in-the-wool lifer in this scenario, and you could totally pull that off. But my instinct is to go the other way and build it with a younger person with a certain amount of teen angst and father issues. And I think that was spot on. I think it worked perfectly how it was built that way, because we even had talked about using Richard Riley, who played Phil, in the role of Balthazar.
Wow,
And
that would have been totally different.
so different. So we felt like we needed that kind of spin to put this old soul in this young, you know, this young aesthetic of a person, to let it even be further confusing. And then he said, look, I wrote Jimmy Boyle for you. And I'm like, yeah, I see that. I get it. I actually haven't gotten to do something with this much of a life arc where it's literally goes from life to death, all the way through. So I was really excited to do that.
Well, one sidebar, a sidebar for the sidebar. In Balthazar's clothing, this might be a question for Mark, but you might have some insight. His clothes were very ill-fitting. It looked like he was wearing, to your point about him looking like a teen, it looked like he was a teen in old man prosecutor clothes. They're kind of baggy and hanging off him. Was that a deliberate kind of a statement?
Absolutely. It was part of the haggard, worn out, disheveled, no care, not clearly not trying to be anything, despondent, cynical, all these things that we're trying to support where he was at that time. So yeah, you nailed that. That's for sure. And I'm glad it landed with you. Thanks.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense, because if you think about it, you know, once we're dead, well, I've never been dead, so I can't say, but we're no longer our bodies. These are the stuff we see in Limbo in this picture is sort of Jimmy's manifestation of what he can accept and be familiar with. So if the guy kind of presiding over his case for the prosecution is showing up in clothes, he doesn't care. He's like, I guess these are people clothes. Attention to detail doesn't matter.
Yeah. And so his lands clearly, and then Cassiel's lands as well, being very, you know, very sanitary, very clean, very angelic and white, and you know, reflecting her beauty as it goes, and you know, so these performances then support this presentation, the aesthetic, and Scotty Thompson's able to bring a kind of a coldness and a coolness to her character, but also masking an uncertainty, masking you know, a little bit of bewildered, and so, and Lucien bringing that cynicism and anger. Matt, he's got father issues, man, and and those performances are great. So the challenging, and again, is that we didn't have a lot of rehearsal time, and those things are really delicately balanced with rehearsal and performance, and we didn't have the rehearsal time. So it would give a lot of credit to everybody on their performance and Mark's direction, and that Mark was able to. Mark and his casting director, Shannon McKinney, were able to bring in people who were very accessible to quick study, very accessible to choice, make choices, let go of choices, redirect, just very competent craftsmen. And so I think that showed up in everybody that was on screen. And what I love about everyone's performances is the life arcs that show up with them. You know, the gentleman that plays my father, Andrew Elvis Miller, you know, he comes in and he just comes in with his whole story, and then bravado, and then he's entirely, you know, put to task by the fact that his irreverent son's in front of him. Or, you know, to get to work with Veronica Cartwright was such a delight. To get to work with Richard Riley, and he has such an endearing person to him, and his face is so likable and charming. And here he is, we've got this scene, and he's full of hope without reason. And yet I'm this guy who's lived an entire life that's had very little hope, has taken for granted the opportunity to, you know, so all of these things were so great, but challenging for sure. My character typically is a violent person with the propensity to fly off the handle and act and lash out. And in this limbo setting, unable to do so, there's a certain restraint that Mark was continuing to keep a leash on. I kept saying, Mark, I think I would grab this guy. I think I would hit. I'd throw a chair. I'd you know, bust this place up. And he says, yeah, typically in the real world, we'll get to that. But here in limbo, there's a restraint that doesn't allow that. And so that's got to boil or simmer at the top. And I want to see that. So I give him a lot of credit for, and that was challenging for me. And sorry to go on about this, but it's so interesting that the one scene with Angela, the prostitute with the heart of gold, her pimp, her manager comes in, Frank, and you really think it's going to be this dogfight. And there's this palpable tension that's there, of which, you know, I was compelled to go ahead and act on, and let's hook, let's fight. And then I realized too in the moment, and Mark was like, let's just get it to that point and move on. Because this is the restraint that will follow in when we get into limbo. So it was a great exercise, and I'm happy with the payoff for it too.
Definitely. There are so many layers to each of these characters that the movie demands sort of a rewatch, because you pick up on certain things. You're like, oh, I bet that circles back to something we saw earlier in the film, particularly with Scotty Thompson's character, because as you mentioned, there's the icy persona, there's the level of doubt, but there's also a level of insecurity considering who her character turns out to be. Not only with the struggle she has later in the film, but, you know, it's all very, very fascinating. One of the challenges I can imagine is just keeping a straight face while Richard Riley is telling that nun joke, which again, we're not going to spoil, but I fell over. I was sitting at a desk and I still fell over.
All of his jokes, you know, we got so engaged in our work that we forgot there was a lot of dark comedy in this. And sometimes when you're not able to rehearse as much, you miss that drum tap timing of comedy is a really timed vehicle. And so Richard is just, he ticks with that. So he's so great at it. So he was definitely the comic relief, and he is in it. And there were actually a lot of jokes that he had that Mark wasn't able to cut into the movie based on, you know, tone and time. But yeah, he had so much. And so it was just a delight to kind of have him, because he was coming up with his own stuff. You know, he was coming up with, oh, did you hear the one about, you know, and we'd be like, oh my God, this is great. This is gold. So yeah, he was fantastic.
And briefly, this isn't, I think, a spoiler because he's listed right there in the cast, but James Purefoy shows up as Lucifer in a pivotal scene.
Right.
He's an English actor, if I'm not mistaken, right?
You're correct. Yes.
This is a true testament to him, and I don't know if he and Mark worked this out, but when he opens his mouth and he's got this kind of a Southern accent going on, at first it's kind of funny and a little bit silly, but by the time his scene is over, there's no doubt that, you know, he is who he is, and there's a chilling effect on the story, which that was pretty cool to behold.
I'm glad that landed with you, Ian, because that's really what James was going with, and Mark and he did work that out. James wanted to come in and actually bring a certain swagger to the character, but also a certain George W. Bush personality, make him a little bushy and dismissive and fun until it gets to the point where he makes that stare. You wouldn't want to disappoint me. And it lands and you're like, whoa, that's dark and that's deep. And then you know who he is for sure. That to me just was part of how it works. And I think James had a delightfully delicious time doing it. He kind of allows his number two, Peter Jacobson, that's playing Belial, to come in and be the absolute sting, poignant, terse, to the point. Peter's excellent as an actor at spitting out dialogue and making it, land and jab. And James let him do that. And I'll be the devil may care devil until I need to make my point. I thought it worked great as a tandem. And so we were lucky with those types. Again, Mark bringing in people who were going to bring something to the party in this regard. Who does this very well is Rob Zombie with his ensemble of casting. And I think Mark is right there with that as well. And so that makes the movie, that, and with the lighting, the shot composition, Christos, our DP, lensing it, a certain amount of art direction, particularly because we're in this confined room for a long time and trying to keep it active and keep it interesting, not being a talking head. Again, one of the challenges. So lend a lot of credit to Mark. Mark knew that, and that's exactly why he built in the flashback scenes to go out into the real world and to get out of that courtroom for some breath and come back in. So it seems like it works well together.
Oh, definitely. I do want to circle back to the idea
Sure.
of this being the two movies and your scenes with Angela. They're very specific or very different types of films. And I feel like I could
Yes.
have watched the feature length version of either one of them. And when you're out there like on the roof of the apartment in lawn chairs watching the sunset, and then you go back to Limbo, it's kind of jarring because I'm like, oh, now I'm back to this other story that I really love. As an actor, specifically because you didn't have as much rehearsal time, and in some cases you're working with newer performers, was that hard for you to keep up with just mentally and centering your character for each of these situations?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm not going to kid you and say, oh, yeah, this is just what we do, or because it was exactly, Ian, what you just spoke to, the emotional place. When I finally understood that Limbo was going to be an area of a certain amount of restraint, and I knew that if I'm not going to be able to physicalize some of my emotional consideration, I'm going to have to go from awakening to where am I, who are you, bewilderment, your confusion, disbelief, you say you're what? Really? To irreverence, to fear, anxiety about what the future holds, anxiety about what the present holds, to hope. Okay, well, maybe we can change the deal here. I got a chance. Okay, well, let me talk you into this, to plea bargaining, to actually engaging in the possibility of euphoria. I might get out of this. I'm unscathed. This is all happening in a chair, essentially. And so when I went out into the real world, it becomes heightened, believe it or not. So those things are rather internalized, hopefully coming across in my eyes and maybe vocal tone. But then when I get out in the real world, I got this vehicle, this physical body where I can hit and punch and yell and take and point firearms and all these other actions that we have in reality that we may not have in another world. And so, yeah, that's a huge challenge. Um, and still trying to tell the story so that it didn't become too much of two stories, although it really does. It really does. And so when we went to reality, I was trying to heighten a lot of those, but not to the point. Mark is very grounded on real natural presentation. Of course, this is talking about a guy that's got demons walking around with horns out of their heads, which is fantastic. But so I still had to ground it in some base of reality. Sometimes we would steal shots. So, for instance, the shot that we did on the roof, what was really, she was trying to appeal to me. She was trying to engage me in something, again, to get out of that apartment room. And Mark just really came up with, let's go to the roof. And if nothing else, let's see if we can, maybe there's a plant up there. We didn't have anything specifically designed, but he knew he wanted to get me out of my apartment with her out into some place of hope, I guess. And that scene just worked so great, just sitting on that rooftop. It could be a scene out of some beautiful love story. It could be Benny and June, or Sid and Nancy. So I give Mark a lot of credit for looking for those. And we got to the point where we were looking for opportunities. We were looking for places to make, catch a little lightning in a bottle in where we could. And so, and Mark's really good at that. So.
Well, we're kind of short on time, and I feel like I could talk.
I've got time. I'm not on a schedule, but you are. So whenever you're done, you're done. I apologize for speaking so much.
No, this is great. It's more the limitation of Zoom, because it cuts you off after a certain point, kind of a thing.
I get it. Right. I remember. Yeah.
But we do have a few minutes left, so maybe we'll talk another time, because this has been fun. When I was doing the research to talk to you, I found that you had a whole other life in baseball. Is that right? That's not a phantom Wikipedia lie.
No, that's not that. And that wasn't limbo either. My passion, and I hope we all have a passion. I'm going to ask your audience to find your passion and pursue it or engage in it, whatever that is. And so I'm hoping everyone does that. But mine was baseball. As a young boy, I played, and then I went off and went to college on a baseball scholarship, and then got drafted by the Seattle Mariners and traded to the Houston Astros and played in the minor leagues, and then became a scout and a coach, looking for players to play professionally, and then was being groomed to be an executive for a major league team. I have no doubt that I might have had some success as perhaps a general manager. And I'm going to grab my baseball glove. This is the last glove I played with to prove, that I'm not making this up. And then, so I followed a girl into an acting class one day in Houston, Texas, to chat her up about some dinner arrangements potentially, or essentially just ask for a date. And I saw what they were doing on stage, Ian, and it spoke to me. And I said, well, that's my people. I can do that. And I couldn't actually do that as much as I thought I could. So I went back to learn to do that in college. I went back to college at Brooklyn College to learn acting. And that proved to be very serviceable. And I went back to Texas and did stage in Houston and theater at the Alley Theater, and then cut my teeth in television on Walker, Texas Ranger. So I've had the opportunity to have two really wonderful careers, one in baseball and one, obviously, what I'm doing now, acting. And there's not a lot of crossover between the two other than that thing, passion, absolutely. I think there's hard work. Those go hand in hand. Athletics to me is very practiced, rote. You're developing a skill set by continuing to practice. True too in the arts, but I also think there's a certain organic nature to the arts where things happen, and if you're prepared for them to allow them to happen, it's a little bit better. If you go over your lines time and time again, they sound as if you go over them time and time again, and they become a bit flat. So there has to be a little organic appeal. And so it took me a little bit of time to understand, to let go of rehearsing lines so much the way I might with ground balls and let them happen. So yeah, man, if baseball season's coming back, where are you in the world today? Where is it?
I'm just outside Chicago, so we're in Cubs Sox territory.
You're right there, and the Brewers aren't far either. So up in Milwaukee, so you got some baseball, and it's going to happen in a couple of days here, which I'm excited about. So
cool. Well, actually, you kind of mentioned this at the top of the show, but I wanted to ask you, in this time of lockdowns, with everything, studios being shuttered and all that, what have you been doing to keep your creative juices going? What has been your creative outlet?
Great question, and I'm trying to be as active and creative as I can. So I started right away. The very first thing was I got engaged in reading the book Lonesome Dove, one chapter a day. This is Larry McMurtry's masterpiece. We all know the miniseries with Mr. Duvall and Tommy Lee Jones. So I read that and invited several of my friends, Scotty Thompson being one of them, to come in and read a chapter a day. 102 days, 102 chapters in. We got through that old cattle drive, and it was a long one. It was quite a journey. So we did that, Lonesome Dove, on YouTube. It's free. It's out there. If you need some background, noise, it's a heck of a story to listen to. Lew Temple YouTube channel, I think. So we did that. I have been writing a script. I was commissioned to write a South Texas story, coming of age story that's got a fishing element to it called Ace in the Hole, which I'm enjoying very much. I have a Patreon subscription website where I've set it up to you can subscribe for the nominal fee of $5 and pitch your story, and we'll engage in storytelling, writing your script. Lots of background stuff from my career, other people's careers. So that's an invitation to get involved. There were 3 movies that I was going to do during this course of time. All of them have been pushed. 2 of them were actually going up into production, trying kind of get under the radar of the safety hazards, but wisely chose to back off. One of which is in the UK, which I can't even go. We're not even allowed to travel to the UK right now.
Right.
There's a television show that I'm being part of. It's an H.P. Lovecraft production material that I'm thrilled with, and I really want to get that thing moving forward, and we've got some good people attached to that. I have a movie coming out in September. It's a family adventure movie called Time Crafters, Treasure of Pirates Cove. It's a takeoff on the Goonies. So,
wow.
So we've got pirates, 2 pirate ships transported in time travel to modern day seaside Renaissance fair town. Our 5 young 12-year-olds find the pirate booty, and the pirates want it back, and adventure ensues. So it's perfect. And it's with Malcolm McDowell and Denise Richards and Eric Balfour, and I'm really excited for that one. So trying to stay really busy. Actually, I'm very engaged in my everyday to-do list. I found that was serviceable to me, was to build a list and to be a student of my calendar. And so I've tried to really stay busy and been engaged in tons of podcasts, tons of Zoom conferences. I did a play on Zoom. it's interesting. We talk about talking heads. I worked with a director who was really great at being able to direct on Zoom and make it engaging by, having you push in or get up and walk away and come back into into your lens. And so there's a whole brave new world about doing things on Zoom, as you're well aware of being on it. So, been staying busy. How about you?
It's pretty much the same thing. Just
Right.
doing, podcasting, and I've got a day job, so maintaining that, working remotely, and that kind of a thing. Everything's over the computer and video cameras now. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
we're getting pretty good with our best friend, the laptop, right?
yeah. I'm hungry to be able to get back and re-engage with people one on one, because you're a performer, so Zoom and everything works, but nothing can replace the immediacy and the intimacy of one-to-one contact. So I'm hoping that
Agreed.
someday we get back to normalcy,
We
whatever that
will.
means.
We will. It's interesting because having, spent some time on the show The Walking Dead, we spoke a lot about what it was like to have our lives changed in upheaval. And at that time, we were talking about how alternative universe that would be. And here we are living it,
Yeah.
in our own way. And we always focused on hope on The Walking Dead. And I think that's a good foundation for us to kind of maintain during these times, and to continue to look for the bright future as opposed to the wayward future, and also to adjust to what the overused term new normal, but just adjust, just be able to bounce into what's being requested or regarded. Wearing a mask as something as simple and nominal as that, be aware of other people's, space and courtesy, the same as if you were a smoker, right?
Right. Well, I think also bringing it back to LIMBO full circle. And then I got to jump off. The
Sure.
clock is my enemy. One of the things I think came across beautifully, especially in those scenes in the apartment, is Jimmy had no idea how good he had it, even though he was living a crummy, I've got to go steal to get my food kind of a life, until he found out what real suffering was.
Right.
So even though we're kind of down in the dumps right now, I can't speak for everyone because not everybody's in the same circumstance, but we still have life. We still have the opportunity to make the very best of it, because there are worse alternative realities, to be sure.
Yes, absolutely. And so let's look for the best of what we had, and be thankful and grateful for how it's going. And we are going to get through it. We're going to get through it and be blessed. We're going to get double for our trouble. How's that? It's going to be twice as good as it ever was when we get through this.
I gotta believe that, man. Well,
All right.
thank you so much for talking to me. I actually had a list of questions, but in the name of not over rehearsing things, I love this. This is just a free flowing conversation, one that I'd love to continue at some point in the future.
Yeah,
But
please
for now,
invite me anytime. I'd be happy to come back and visit and reconnect. And thank you for having me, Ian, and thanks for taking the time to watch Limbo and be a part of that audience. And I'm really hopeful that we all get to see that movie and many others. And thanks for all you do too.
all right, man. Well, thank you. Take care and be well.
Very good. Take care, man. Cool.
You too. Bye.
All right.